Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Jason Putnam on the podcast. He is the CEO of Vetty, which is a background check and hiring acceleration platform. This is a really interesting episode because obviously we're both in the same kind of recruitment, talent acquisition industry, and so we talk a lot about the changes and kind of what's going on in the recruitment and talent world from an AI and a growth perspective. But we also dig deep into his experience building a team of scalers that he calls them, that he kind of brings with him into different organizations that he joins to exponentially help grow that company. So really fascinating episode. I think we'll get a lot out of it. So let's get Jason on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Jason, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of jump right in. Give everybody listening and watching a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, my name's Jason Putnam. I'm currently the CEO of a company called Vetty. I live in Austin, similar to you, right? We're actually
Yep,
close to being neighbors, we found out.
that's right.
I also spend a lot of time just helping people in our space and in other spaces from a advisory or board perspective. Yeah, that's about it. I've been doing this for a long time, leading sales, marketing. This is my first role as a CEO, and I am loving it.
Well, I guess we did a pre-record a week or so ago, and I don't think we touched on this being a first CEO gig. So I'd be curious to kind of dig into that a little bit. But
Sure.
let's talk a little bit about Vetty. So give us a high level of how long you've been involved with the company, why you joined, and maybe a little overview of what it actually is.
Yeah, it's I've been offered a CEO role a couple of times, and typically there's whether it's I'm coming in as an employee to lead it or even go sit on a board, there's some things that I care about. And this has been the first combination of all those things coming together where I've wanted to say yes. So at the root, what we do is we're what's called a hiring acceleration platform. So all the non-sexy stuff that has to get somebody into a job, like a background check and a drug test and anything occupational health, all that stuff, especially in healthcare, we do all that stuff with a tech platform. I've been here about 10 months. I was brought in by the investors. I'm usually somebody who comes in kind of post founder when they're ready to have that company scale. So moving from that founder level culture. So I'll either come in to take over the seat like I've done here, or come in side by side with the existing founding team and bring a certain level of scalability to that. I have a team of what we like to call serial scalers. They've been with me, some of them for 15 years, some of them 5 or 6 companies in a row. So we just bring them in different roles. We all know how to do it, and we go from there.
Got it. Well, there's a lot to unpack there because I want to get into the kind of being brought in post founder because we have a lot of startup founders on the podcast. So I'm very curious to kind of unpack that. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the platform and how it operates and everything because obviously I'm in the recruitment world. So this is kind of an interesting kind of conversation just because I'm in this space. So what's your kind of ICP? Like, who's your target customer? And then, maybe what are some of the efficiencies that your platform provides over some of the others that exist, or just kind of over the status quo?
Yeah, I'll keep it high level but for those people who do what you and I do, I'll go a little bit deeper on some of it, Justin. So the hardest thing to do in the background check and the screening space is to do what's called healthcare staffing. So you have big
Mm,
staffing firms who their
yep.
clients may be um, per diem nurses, they could be doctors, they could be anybody, and these people are working multiple jobs, potentially even in a single week. So that's our biggest ICP right now, and the reason it's our biggest ICP is no other people in the space that we compete with wanted to solve that. So our
Mm,
founders came in first. They came from the space with some big companies in the space, and they said, hey, let's solve it first with technology. Most of the other people in the space are services company, and then they layer on some technology, and you get this kind of
got it.
Frankenstack approach. So healthcare staffing, gig, anything where compliance is really important, with compliance being kind of the opposite of the AI side of the coin. Anytime, like DOT, anytime where it's really important that you're bringing the right people in and being compliant, that's where we come in. And the platform not having this Frankenstack that was kind of built and hobbled together. We're the only platform where everybody can do all those things on one platform. So not only can you do the background check and all the occupational health, you can do credentialing, you can do ongoing monitoring if you want in perpetuity, social media monitoring on the front end or going. So it all happens in one platform, and the benefit for the clients, and they're all relatively large clients, even though we have a pretty hefty SMB side. They're not having to swivel chair between multiple platforms. They do everything in Vetty or with one of our integrations. So we have the best integration into Bullhorn. So if you're using Bullhorn as an agency, you don't have to use Bullhorn, whatever clients integrated with them in 3 or 4 other products. It all happens with one platform.
So you're going after the staffing firms because obviously they're the ones hiring a lot of these healthcare gig workers. They're shift workers, things like that. So they need to be very fast in their verification process of,
Correct.
obviously because you need to make sure their healthcare credentials, certifications are up to date or active, et cetera. So that's kind of your ideal target market.
It is for now, and we're expanding outside of that. As we've kind of brought in and moved from a product-led company to a go-to-market-led company, we've had 30 or 40% growth every year with one salesperson and very limited marketing. Wow. So as we brought this team in, the original guy who's doing that, who's still here, was amazing. He just had a lot of connections in staffing and healthcare. We have traditional healthcare systems too, but now with the new team, we're going to adjacent type areas, be it transportation, logistics, anything where compliance is really important. You need to know a lot about the people before you bring them in, but also post-hire as well.
Got it. Fascinating. So let's talk a little about how you got brought in. So you said this was your first CEO gig. You've been brought in other times to kind of partner with the founder. So how did that transition happen? So how did you select Vetty as that one that you're like, you know what, I do want to kind of step in post founder and be the CEO and actually, sit in the top seat and drive the entire organization as opposed to just driving the go to market?
Yeah. And a lot of the other companies, I was sometimes acting as a president, sometimes acting as a chief of staff. I mean, the title may have been CRO, but I was doing a lot of, sometimes driving operations.
Yeah.
For me, it's this, whether I'm going into a company alongside a founder, or whether I came in here, whether I've asked to sit on boards and I sit on boards, there's some things from like my ethos that are important to me. And one is they have to be good people. So not just within the organization, but the investors in the board have to be good people. That's really critical. A lot of the reasons I've turned down other CEO gigs is I did not see eye to eye with the investors, right? And how they think about what healthy growth looks like and how they would treat people. They have to have good products. Doesn't have to be the best product because you can bring good product people in. So Vetty has an amazing product, really good people. I knew the founders beforehand, so I knew I had some trust there. I want to make sure we can make a difference. Whether that's, again, sitting on a board or here, we're getting nurses into jobs faster, which makes more money for our clients, right? But also is better for everything. And I want it to be at the right stage. Like, I don't want to be the CEO of Coca-Cola ever, right? I want to be able to come in and where it's a good product, a good people. They're at the right stage. They need my team of scalers expertise to take it to the next level. So I'm a lot of times I'll come in and take somebody from 1 to 10 million or 10 to 50 million, and just be able to do that exponentially faster than it could with the previous regime.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've noticed over working with a number of startups and typically being brought in by investment companies to help replace the CRO or the CFO or the CEO, even in certain instances, where what got you here won't get you there. Meaning a lot of people are really good at 0 to 1. A lot of people are really good at that. Okay, we got off the ground. Now we're going 1 to 10, but they're not going to be the person that gets you from 10 to 50, and they're not the right person to go from 50 plus, right? So it seems like you've been able to kind of come in, help companies go from that 1 to 10, but also can take it to that next level, because that's an interesting kind of dynamic. So maybe talk about some of the things that you, and I want to touch on your scalers that you bring in next, but what are some of the things that when you come in, there are easy levers for you to pull on that almost exist in all these organizations that you get brought into that are going from that 1 to 10 or 10 to 50?
Every company is essentially the same. It's now just scale.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go into a 5-person company or a 500,000 person company. Companies are all relatively set up the same. So to answer your question, as you're thinking about it holistically, do we have the right people in the company to do whatever that job may be? In go to market, right? That's one answer. But it's not just do they have the will to do it, but do they have the skill set? And as companies grow, that skill set changes. So you may need to move the people around. Do we have enough of, are we a known entity in the market? right? So some people will call that brand. I don't care what you call it, but a lot of the times in the founder world, they don't understand marketing. They took a marketing class once in college. They just think you turn on a machine and it goes. But building brand on the front end is really the most important thing, because brand makes the go-to-market much more efficacy. The next thing is the product. Is it a good product? Will people buy it? Does it solve a problem? Right? Is it an aspirin? Is it a vitamin? Just depending on what, both are fine. Just got to understand that. Do we know how to talk about the product correctly from a pitch perspective, both internally, externally, and to investors? So what you'll see a lot in the founder culture is they'll do an hour-long demo, clicking buttons about the technology, hoping somebody buys it, versus a pitch that talks about here's what's going to be true if you implement this product or if you don't implement the product. And then also knowing who the right personas are that we're selling to, both from an ICP, but also within the organization. So, my previous HR tech companies, a lot of times we would sell to a CHRO or like a VP of talent. Here we're selling a lot on the ops side and HR side. So it's slightly different. So you just got to make sure you have that and understand where the budget is. And then also the processes. And that's where I see a lot in the 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 stage companies, where what got them there from a process perspective will not get them there, because that is the enemy of scalability. And what you really have to do is understand that it just because, and this is again the founder's part, usually that founder will be the first salesperson and they'll go from 0 to 1, which happened at Vetty. But they made every presentation customized to whoever they were talking to, right? And then they go, okay, now I need to go 1 to 10, and that doesn't work. So I'm very much the fan of, can you do it? Is somebody buying your product? Yes. So now you've kind of established that somebody will buy it. Now, can you make it repeatable? And repeatable means, can you talk to 20 people the exact same way with the exact same material, the same demo, and the same deck, and 4 people buy it without having to customize it? Once you can do that over and over, then you can layer on the scalability part of putting sales reps to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I feel like there's so many times where, and I even see this in my own business, where like I know what I'm doing, but it's hard for me to document what I'm doing to then give to my salesperson that I hired, and then for her to go out and drive her own revenue. So yeah, I can see that kind of founder. You kind of just do it because you've done it forever and you know what you're doing, as opposed to being like, is this a repeatable process that I can just give this handbook to somebody and go, execute essentially. So
yeah, and you have to have a level of humility.
Right.
Because again, if you look at Vetty, the original founder got a 0 to 1 as CEO. He took a back seat and became chief product officer. They brought on a different CEO who got him to 10, right? But that same person, who was more of an operator, brought in a lot of good operational excellence, but not the scalability, right? So now I'm the 10 to 50 person, which I've done before.
Yeah.
And it's just, you have to know as a founder when to take a back seat.
Yeah. And that's probably the hardest part, I would imagine, as a founder, because it's the baby that you've birthed into this world, and you don't want somebody to come in and say thanks, but I'll take it from here. But yeah, how does, when you've done it where you've been kind of part of the team or being on boards, like how hard is it to get a founder who maybe they've got an amazing product, an amazing company, they've done an amazing job, but in order for them to get to that next level, that founder either needs to shift into a different role within the organization or shift out of the organization entirely. And having them see that vision of your business is going to live on, and you're probably going to still have equity in it or whatever, but like you can't be at the helm. Like, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, it's typically driven by the investors.
Okay.
Before I'm in there. And then during the interview process, whether it's investors, founders, or I'm going in as a CRO or president or whatever, I'm just brutally honest with people. Now, the persona of the founder also matters. So you're going to typically have 2 kinds of founders. You have the go-to-market type founder, and you have the tech type founder, right? So a tech type founder conversation is going to be very different, because they don't know what you know if you're, let's say, a go-to-market led CEO like I am. But you're going to be speaking 2 different languages. So it's pretty much, you go in your corner, do what you're really good at, let me handle this part from here.
Got it.
Right? And if you have questions, it's actually harder if they have the same background as you do, because they did what they thought was right to get them to a certain stage. And whether it's just out of date or out of scale, you then have to come in and do that, because they're going to be the ones, if anything falters, it's going to be hard for them to not step in and be able to do that. But it's just about having brutally honest conversations with people.
Yeah.
I had a conversation. I'll tell you this. I had the exact conversation here with one of our founders, and he is still on the board, still chairman, owns an exorbitant amount of equity in the company. And we had this, it's a tech-led person. We had this exact conversation. Like, you have a choice, Mr. Founder. You can be rich or you can be famous. You can't be both.
Mm.
Right? You're going to be rich if I can be famous. And by famous, I mean, not really be famous, but get out of the way. Let me go
Yep.
do the things you weren't able to do. I'm going to make this much money and you're going to make this much money.
Right.
Now, if you want to be famous, you're going to have to give up this much money.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're never going to get to that level because you don't have the skill set to get there.
Right.
Just like I don't have the skill set or the want to go be the CEO of Coca-Cola. Like,
right.
Not my thing.
Fascinating. I want to touch a little bit on you kind of hit on a little bit of like what processes or go-to-market strategy maybe they're used to doesn't play in this new world. So, I've been listening to books and reading a lot about kind of the zero-click search with, AI and people are not using Google as much. And so, your SaaS companies are, not able to predict the pipeline that they used to, because it used to be just, especially for high velocity companies, you used to be able to just turn up the ad revenue, the Google ad revenue, and see more deal flow come in and things like that. What are some of the things that you're seeing in this zero-click search world of people using ChatGPT and the like to search for things? How does it change your go-to-market?
I'm going to say this, I'm a very humble person, so this may not sound humble, but I promise I'm just speaking from experience. I've always been a bit of an oddball when it comes to go-to-market. Like,
Okay.
I didn't take the traditional approach because I didn't think it worked to say send 1,000 emails, make 1,000 phone calls. Right? Even though it did work, there's this stat out there that at any given time, 3% of people want to buy your product, which means 97% don't today. There's a portion of them who want to buy it a week from now, and a portion who want to buy it for a month from now. But in the old days, our old days, right, we would send out 1,000 emails and we may get 5 or 10 people respond. You luckily found the 3%.
Right.
It didn't work well then, and it doesn't work at all now. So decades ago, my approach was, hey, let's be thought leaders in the space. Let's build brand first. Let's be trusted. So when they're in the 97% and they flip to the 3%, we're going to be that first trusted phone call that they make. And I've done that forever with my team, and it has worked exponentially. I get texts every day. Hey, somebody's looking for this service. Can you do it? Not even partners, right? Because you built that trust in the ecosystem. When we talk about this team of scalers, they're able to not only scale, but know where we want to go and do it quickly. So we came in with almost no recognition in the space. If you look at ChatGPT now, and I'm looking on the other screen just because I just got this data, Vetty, which is this big compared to some of the other big players in the space, we are number one in AI searches for the following terms: background check platforms, education, employment verifications, e-signature workflows, health screening, and onboarding documentation. Like, we are number one across AI in all of those terms.
So
that when you talk about your kind of
in AI, you're gonna rank or come up in their recommendations
number one,
similar to if you bought the keywords in Google.
Right. So we've optimized. It's all about putting the work in early.
Yeah.
And when we talk about being on boards and talking to founders, my thing, I always tell them, we practice what we preach: spend the first year in your money building brand. And that's really hard because you don't see a return on it for a year. And I had a founder once tell me, well, why don't I just start it a year from now? I'm like, no, you're not understanding. You have to put a year's worth of work in. Because if you just start the demand gen part and people don't know you as a brand and you're not trusted, the efficacy of the return on that spend is very low, right? We are now winning awards at Vetty. I've been here 10 months. I just won an award recently. We just won one of the 11 hottest companies to follow in 2026 next to Google, right? But now when I do a search, I've heard of Vetty before somewhere in my consciousness, and now it's number one. I'm much more likely to click on that and request information than I am if I just see Vetty number one and not know about it, or if I know about Vetty, but I don't find it in search. So it's a combination of bringing that together that's key.
That's fascinating. So talking about building brand and kind of the ChatGPT thing, and I hate to go down too big of a rabbit hole in this, but I'm very curious about it because a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of companies in general are either not aware or struggling with this. So what are some of the things that, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm going to take the next year and kind of revert back to being a thought leader and building the brand, what are some of the things that a founder or a small startup should be doing to kind of start that process to optimize their website, to optimize their content, to put out the right kind of content? Like, what are some of the things that you would, high levelly kind of recommend?
Yeah, it depends on the stage of their company, because you could be a founder of a 200-person company, the founder of a 5-person company. So if you're truly the figurehead of the company from a founder perspective, there's a period of time where your brand is the company brand,
Yeah.
and you have to be aware of that. Then there is a time, and this is what makes it hard, where your brand may or may not be detrimental to the company brand,
Mm,
or it may not be additive to the company brand, whether it's detrimental or not. So depending on where you are, what I would say is, if you're good at getting out there and building networks, don't worry about the ROI yet. Talk to as many people as you can. Go to as many conferences as you can. Get invited to as many things. Talk to as many industry experts as you can. And again, kind of give you like low cost, no cost stuff to get out there. Um, depending on where you are, if you don't have a PR firm, go get a PR firm,
mm,
right? Because the PR firm is going to do a multitude of things for, like, I use the same PR firm at multiple companies, and what they're going to do is they're going to let you know what's going on in the industry. They're going to get you earned speaking events, right? Anybody can pay to go speak, or anybody can pay to get an advertorial, right? But when somebody asks you to be on a podcast, or somebody asks you to be on a stage, right? It's that earn type stuff that they're going to be able to do. They're also going to be the voice of reason to be able to protect you as things ultimately may happen. So, like, I would get a PR firm. They're not incredibly expensive. I would outsource any website optimization to somebody who's an expert, and don't just believe to say that they're an expert. Do some reference checking.
yeah.
So we inherited, and again, I'm not the one running marketing. That person's been with me at 3 companies in a row, and she's fantastic. But we went out, we knew what we had. We did some analysis. I brought in my old sales ops person as a consultant, and they worked together and said, here's where the gaps are. They then found the right agency. And we went from getting somewhere around 2 demo requests a month to somewhere around 30 demo requests a month
Wow.
overnight. Right. But I'm not the expert on it. She's not the expert on it. She
Right.
knows what great looks like. So just go start finding people to get in there and do there. And the other thing I will say is, give away what's in your brain as much as you can. Like,
Mm,
I never asked to be on a board. And the reason I say that is I truly just want to help people who are good people. And ultimately what ends up happening is I probably help 100 people and I ended up on 5 boards, but I still was able to help 95%, of the other people. Just do that. It
yeah.
always comes back in a good way from brand.
Fascinating. I want to jump into the scalers. So you mentioned kind of that you have a team that you bring along with you to different organizations, and you have done for quite a while. So what are I guess, how did you find these people? And then what are the key skill sets that you look for in somebody that could be part of your scaling team?
It's been a combination. If we go back all the way to the beginning, there's somebody who's been with me 6 companies in a row. I inherited
Wow.
him as a sales rep. I knew he was the person. He ended up getting promoted, reload from Atlanta to Austin with me. But it's just building, like, I'm a big fan of, if you're just transparent with people and you're consistent with people and you're honest with people, it's going to build trust. And over time, that trust builds loyalty both ways. So when I called him and said, do you want to move to Austin? Hey, let's go. I then go to a new company, inherit 3 or 4 other people who I can just see through my eyes. Hey, they're good humans. They're good at their job. They both have the skill and the will to do it. Do you want to go to the next thing? And just that team has gotten bigger as we
Mm,
move. And even as I came in here, I brought a handful. There's still more at other places that as we raise or scale, I'm going to bring in for different functions. Um, I'm sitting, even though I'm in a CEO, I'm sitting in kind of the CRO seat now. We have a guy who's running sales, but it's a symphony from a go-to-market perspective to make sure everyone can jive together and play the same notes. But when they've all worked together at multiple companies, they automatically know what I want. I don't have to give them direction. They automatically know how to deal with each other. So the speed by which they get things done it's so fast.
yeah.
And
And when you,
there's people I inherited here who I'm going to take to the next place who aren't in go-to-market, right?
yeah.
Some are in operations, some maybe in finance. Like, you just build this team as you go.
And when you were tapped to be the CEO, did you kind of go say, yes, however, I have a team that I need to bring in, right? Like, you, Jason, are phenomenal, but you are exponentially better by bringing in your team of scalers, as you call them. Like, did you have that conversation, or does it just organically happen when you step in? You're like, cool, let me get in, let me understand the kind of lay of the land, and then I know I'm gonna have to pull some people in at some point.
Depends. So here it was, I knew what I was getting into, and I knew there were some gaps that already needed to be filled from a scalability. So I had those conversations before I ever came,
Yeah.
both with the investors as well as the people on the team. And then as I got here, I started realizing, oh, there's some other gaps I can fill in. But a lot of times my conversation on the front end is, hey, I can do the job. I'm gonna be really good at it. I've been successful at everything I've done. However, you brought it up. I'm exceptionally better, and they're exceptionally better from a false multiplier if we can bring everyone together.
Yeah. And is that something that, because I'm thinking about a startup that I was working with, the company was purchased. The next day, the CEO got an offer letter from the investment company. And the next day after that, the CRO, the CMO, and the COO got offer letters. So it was like very much a package deal, and it was a unique circumstance. It was a European-based company. They were moving HQ to the US. But was that similar to how you worked or have worked, where it's like, okay, day one I'm starting, and then the next day everybody else is starting, and then it just sometimes
It depends on the company, depends on the title. Sometimes, because a lot of times I'll go in, it's either a scale up or a turnaround.
Yeah.
I will say, be ready, right?
Mm.
Let me go in and see what the hell this is first.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I get in there and it's a disaster, like there's one rep who's been with me forever. One of the companies, I didn't bring him. I'm like, you're not a good fit here. Right. Just from a personality perspective, like you're not going to like it here. So just wait till the next one. And then there's times you do that negotiation up front. Yeah.
And I'm sure the people that you've brought with you, obviously they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And so that person, that rep that you said, hey, not this one, bud, not because of you, but because of the situation, they probably were like, cool, thanks for allowing me to
Absolutely.
dodge a bullet, because they know that you're going to pull to the next one. And I feel like that, I know you kind of call them your scalers, but I like that term. I feel like the startup world has a little bit of that kind of built into it, where I know a lot of people that go to one company, one person will jump out and go to a certain company, and then eventually all the other pieces of the puzzle start to kind of get filled in from, they did it at another company. And so it's kind of this very interesting ecosystem that some people get plugged into, which can be very advantageous, especially in a job market like we're in right now, where a lot of people are unemployed. There's, hard to find a job, all this other fun stuff. So if you have that ecosystem, and I tell people all the time when people ask me, like, how do I get a job? And I'm like, you need to build your network. Like, it's all about who you know.
That's all it is.
Because if you know Jason and he knows you and you've done really well with him, odds are you're going to have a better shot of getting into whatever company he's going to than if you don't know him. Right. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's some nuance to that. And this is going to sound hard, but it's worth it. I will spend an exorbitant amount of time truly just even at the individual level trying to talk to people. So there's a good friend of mine who's in our space. She's an analyst, and she has a friend who is a sales rep. I've never worked with him ever. I didn't know him. We got introduced. We meet every 90 days now and have been doing it for years. I've never hired him. Just because there's never been the right perfect fit for him.
Yeah.
But if I called him tomorrow, he would come.
Yeah.
Right. And next week I'm having lunch with somebody I used to work with a decade ago, haven't talked to in 5 years, and he wants to have lunch because 5 years ago I helped him, and it changed his career. But if I called him to come work tomorrow, he would do it.
Yep.
Right. And it's just because I don't have an agenda when it comes to that. I'm truly just trying to help them move up in their career and be better human beings.
And I guess as you think about, we're recording this in early December 2025. I guess let's think about next year, 2026. You obviously have been with Vetty almost a year now. What's your outlook for 2026 in general? Maybe not about Vetty yet, but just kind of like in the M&A market. Obviously, it's Vetty's an investment-backed company, so they probably buy and sell companies all the time. Like, what are you hearing and seeing in the startup world of 2025 was supposed to be this boon for the M&A world because it's been on such a pause for a few years. Now I'm hearing, 2026 is going to be what 2025 was supposed to be. Like, what's your sentiment sitting in that CEO seat, but also, being in the room with other investors?
Yeah, and I'm pretty well connected in the investment community. There was a lot of deals in our space that happened in 2025. Many of them were out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can't raise, we're running out, it's a good fit, we're not going to get 10x. There was still this pre-pandemic perception of, if I'm doing $1 million in revenue, I'm going to get 10x. If I'm doing 10, I'm going to get 10x, right? As long as we're growing. That's not the case anymore. It's like 4 to 5, 5 to 6
Yeah.
now, which is still pretty healthy. Service business is a little less, but there were really big deals that happened in our space. Very large players getting taken off the board, like Paradox as an example. And a lot of really small deals. I think what you'll see, and it's just a prediction in 2026, is the companies that weathered the pandemic, who didn't go raise a whole bunch of cash. So like we've raised a very small amount of cash long before my time, and we're running a company. So if the company's stable and growing, even if it's only growing at, let's say, 30%, not 100%, those are the companies that are going to be very accretive to the next company that they're going to buy.
Yeah.
Right. So I envision there's going to be some M&A that looks like the following. You take a company like Vetty, who's going to grow 70% next year. And we're investing in that growth. So our EBITDA is not going to be as high as if we weren't investing in that growth.
Right.
And underneath that lay a couple of non-growing companies who have high EBITDA that are complementary products. I think you're going to see a lot of that happen through PE next year.
Interesting. And I guess from the HR and kind of recruitment tech space, let's talk a little about AI. So obviously your platform, Vetty, has, I'm assuming, some type of AI built into it that makes it do what it does better, faster, et cetera. How are you leveraging it within Vetty for your teams and things like that? Like maybe what are some of the tools that you rely on, maybe as a leader, like as the CEO, like you personally, like what do you like to lean on? And then what are some of the things that you've scaled across your company?
Yeah, so there's some legality and AI in what we do. So by law, federal law, if you're a background check company, you have to be a credit reporting agency. Right. So you can only go so far with optimization. Here's what that means. By federal law, I do a background check on Justin. Vetty does a background check on Justin, right?
Yep.
And can automate and have, because we were built as a tech company first, everything to the stage by which a human being has to physically look at your file. That's federal law, right? So we have to have people who get there. So we're using AI, kind of natively built early on, but almost all of it's behind the scenes, because we talked about the opposite side of the coin of AI is one side of the coin and compliance is the other. Highly compliant companies are very scared of AI. The state of New Jersey says they're going to implement AI in 2030.
Okay.
Right. Which means if you walk in with an AI only product, they can't buy it. Right. So we have to be as compliant forward as we could possibly be on that side because compliance in what we do is more important than speed and automation, but we built the speed and automation on the back end. From a team perspective, everyone on my team uses it. I use it from a leadership perspective. Everyone uses it. We don't have a mandate of what it has to be, but we do have a mandate that you have to use it. And what you'll find is we're able to put out, from a marketing perspective, content 3, 4, 5 times faster, or 3 or 4 or 5 times more content. Right? I'm able to write board presentations or all hand presentations just because my agentic AI already knows me and it's kind of built around me. So I can actually just prompt it a question and it'll kick out a speech for me if I need it to. Whereas before I would have had to, somebody in marketing would have had to write that, or it would take me, 2 or 3, 4 hours to put it together. So yeah, we're using it a lot in each of our day-to-day functions. I'll give you a great example. We have a client who's been with us forever, our biggest client. Time to renew, new MSA. So they have the old MSA, new MSA. They're like, we need to know everything that's different between these two, the one we signed 4 years ago and the one we signed now. Okay. So CFO, legal's like, oh, it's such a pain. Within 30 seconds, AI spit out every difference and why it matters. Right. Either I would have to pay a third-party attorney to do that.
Yep.
Right. Or I would have done it, or my CFO, or somebody who have had to spend time in that. It took 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to pretty it up.
Yeah, no, I love using it for any type of agreement, because I've had a few come back that they redlined it, but they edited something else that it didn't redline. And then I was like, wait, that looks weird. And then I throw it in ChatGPT. Oh yeah, they changed this, this language. And I was like, okay, well, that's not what they said. But yeah, it's fascinating to use it because, just for those easy things, it's easy for the AI to do, not for you or I, or I'll use myself. It's not for me to just look through a contract that's 10, 15 pages to find one thing that they changed. So
there's some people who love that. I am not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why AI is great for that situation. You just throw it in there and it figures it out. I guess when you think about Vetty and scaling, you said you guys are going to grow like 70% next year. How are you doing that? Is it and also because you've had a lot of experience scaling businesses, when you think about scaling now versus scaling even 2, 3, 4 years ago, a lot of times, to get that 70% growth, you got to, obviously hire a bunch of people. You've got to, a lot in marketing, a lot in sales, and probably some in the product world. How are you thinking about that differently from a human capital perspective when, to get to that 70% scale over year versus what it used to be, 2, 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I actually think it's easier now, and I know that sounds odd, but traditionally what we've done in the VC or the PE world is what we talked about earlier. Hey, somebody bought it. I can make it repeat it. To make it scalable, I go hire 10 sales reps, and I have to make sure my marketing spend can cover, enough demand gen for these 10 sales reps. I brought in my people. I brought in 2 enterprise sales reps who've been with me for 5 and 6 companies in a row. So I know they're good. So there's not that learning curve. The learning curve is learning the industry or learning the product. But now, because they're using AI in their day-to-day life, they're exponentially more efficient.
Mm,
Like we're closing 35 to 40% of our pipeline because we're doing better identifying on the front end using AI,
got it.
right? As opposed to the spray and pray approach. And we've done enough bookings this year already, because it takes time to ramp them up, that we're already going to do 50% next year without selling anything new.
Hmm.
So the money that we put into brand and demand gen and the time and effort we put into efficiency, we've taken something that was good and made it great from an operational excellence perspective. We just made sure we had the right people there. Now, to get exponential scale, could I hire 10 sales reps next year? Yeah. What does that take, though? That takes me going out and having to raise, right? Which is the old way to do it, which I'm fine doing, right? But the days of like what Eightfold did, go raise $300 million and spend it all on sales and marketing to get here, those days are, I think, in my mind, are over, because
Got it.
investors don't have the appetite for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And then I guess, what is your sentiment on just the kind of HR tech recruiting world as it relates to AI? Because everybody I talk to, oh, I've been in recruiting for almost 20 years now. Every year I've been in it. I was in it before LinkedIn was really a thing. And then LinkedIn came up and then, oh, recruiting is going to die because of LinkedIn. And then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're still here. And I think AI is going to replace us at some point. But what's your sentiment on how AI is doing in the kind of talent side of kind of HR tech, and maybe where do you see it kind of going from here?
Yeah, let me put a caveat around it. I think the type of recruiter that you are, which is different than an internal corporate recruiter, is the one of the hardest jobs to do in the world, because it's a two-way sale, right? So
Yeah.
here's what I mean by that. You're going to go talk to somebody who graduated from Stanford, but the person who wants to hire them is a plumbing company in Utah, right? Like that's a bad mix, right? Versus somebody who's top of their class who graduated from a state school who wants to go work at Google. Google doesn't want to hire that person. So your job is just this human capital management and this two-way sale between the two. I don't think in our lifetime AI will ever be smart enough to kind of figure out that level of human interaction. Where I think AI is going to play a lot is how to make you more efficient, how to make the internal recruiters more efficient. But it's hard because TA and recruiting internally sits under HR, and I don't think it should, because HR
Mm,
has really become much more of preventative maintenance so companies don't get sued, whereas TA is really sales. So just
yeah.
like I talk about my sales team being more efficient, I see recruiters being more efficient. I do believe there's going to be a future, not that far in the future, where the amount of corporate recruiters is going to be very, 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 very small. And what AI will enable it to do is put a lot of that responsibility onto the hiring manager.
Mm,
Because what internal recruiters have become are just services for a hiring manager,
yep.
right? And I'm not belittling it, it just is. But if a hiring manager can say, I have an opening now, I have an opening in 2 months, click a button, 5 people who are perfect fit show up on their calendar for an interview tomorrow, why do you need a recruiter?
Yeah.
Now, when that gap happens, I think your business and everybody else who's an outside recruiter is going to go through the roof, because you're going to have hiring managers go, I don't have time for this. I'm happy to go pay 20%.
Yeah.
Right. So that I don't know if that's next year or 5 years from now, but that's kind of how we see the future of recruiting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just talking to a buddy of mine, and they're shifting their recruitment model away from the what I call whack-a-mole of corporate recruiting, where you get a rec, you fill a rec, you get a position, job, whatever you want to call it, into being much more of a thought partner or business partner. So you have to learn the business, you have to be knowledgeable about the industry that you're recruiting in, because most recruiters, and I can say that because I am one, I've hardly ever done the job that I'm recruiting for, right?
Correct.
And so you have to be, you know, inquisitive enough to sit down and research whatever you're going to be recruiting for, so that you have at least enough knowledge to be dangerous. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to know enough. But they're taking it another level, and I think it makes sense for a corporate recruitment organization to say, no, you need to know what's going on in the industry. Who are the top 1, 2 players that we compete with, and who are the best salespeople, marketing people, et cetera, et cetera. And then they're outsourcing a lot of the blocking and tackling, the sourcing, the screening, all that fun stuff, and
Agreed.
allowing the talent partners to be much more business partners and being more strategic versus tactical and just whack-a-mole, essentially, which I think is kind
Agreed.
of interesting.
And I
I
think
was
that's
tell-
exactly when we were talking about the differences in sales. I think that's really what's happened also is sales used to be very, very, very transactional. If I just whack enough moles. And now it's turned into much more of a relational enterprise trust approach. I think the exact same thing will be true in recruiting.
Yeah. Well, let me get this, and then we'll start to wind this thing down here. One thing I've heard from SaaS companies, and these are more enterprise driven, but they're seeing more and more reversion back to pre-COVID being in person, because while the over the last 5 years we've been able to do a lot of sales via virtual, but with a lot of AI content being generated that is fake and all this other fun stuff, they're starting to see going to conferences, having in-person meetings, in-person like dinners and lunches. Those are the things that people are starting to, not in mass, but just starting to come back to being like, oh, that's something that I want as part of my sales process, especially if I'm going to do a 6-figure, 7-figure deal with a company.
Yeah, I've always been that way. Our company's 100% remote, and the one before this was 100% remote. So I don't have the personal need of bringing people in the office, but I want my people to go to other people's offices. So when you think of it that way, because there's so, and I think it's true for hiring too. I think we're going to revert back to you have to come in for an interview,
Yeah.
right? Just to prove that you're a real human. But yeah, one of the conferences we left this year, we left with a $5 million pipeline.
Wow.
Just from that conference.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, I guess I asked you a little bit about 2026 from a M&A perspective. I guess you already kind of talked about some things that you're going to do next year from a Vetty perspective, but maybe what's 1 or 2 things that you're really trying to accomplish 12 months from now, that if we jumped on a podcast, you'd be like, hey, we did these things, and this is kind of how we did it.
Yeah, so taking the job, I broke the first 3 years into 0 to 18 months and 18 to 36.
Okay.
And 0 to 18 was I wanted to get most background check companies are viewed really as like a compliance checkbox. And I really want to become a strategic advantage for our clients. What we have found getting out to conferences and me being CEO and visiting, customers and talking to them is we're already doing that. It's just nobody's talking about it. So we have some great case studies and more companies, coming out talking about the competitive advantage that we're giving them versus their competitors. When you look at 18 to 36, I'd like Vetty to be much more of a household name versus a niche name within, let's just say, staffing and healthcare, and much more broadly. We have a bunch of enterprise clients, but I would like us to be a household name on the enterprise side. And then I would like the product to be the best product there is in the market. I already think it is, but there's always people nipping at your heels to do there. So we need to keep that competitive edge when we get there. Yeah. And then the third thing is I would love to have the rest of my team who's sitting on the bench to come here and help us, kind of grow the journey.
Bring the full scalers together in 2026. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, Jason, man, this has been a lot of fun. I could probably talk to you for a lot longer, but I'll be respectful of your time here. I do want to end the episode like I do every episode with a 3-pack of questions.
Sure.
So let's start with the first one. What's an influential book or maybe a podcast that you would recommend to the audience?
I'll do 2. I'll do a podcast and then I'll do a book. the podcast, especially if you're in our industry, the Chad and Cheese podcast is great. It's a little edgy, but it really gives kind of a no nonsense view of what's going on in the TA and the HR space. From a book perspective, unrelated to our space, there's a great book, and it kind of changed my life. It's called Move Fast, Break Shit, and Burn Out. And the concept is of being a catalyst, and catalysts process things real fast, go really fast, but sometimes we feel like we're broken because we can very much be viewed as a bull in a china shop. So I read the book, reached out to the authors, ended up being on their podcast. I'm now on their board. So like that book
nice.
was very, very influential for me, to kind of understand that I need to double down on what I'm good at in that aspect, and then fill the roster around me with other people who can do things to kind of offset those things I'm not good at. But yeah, those are the two.
Awesome. Love it. Favorite thing to do outside of work?
Several things. I like to be outside. Big fitness person. So we're 5 or 6, sometimes 7 days a week from that aspect. I love some geeky stuff like Star Wars and Marvel and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll go do that. And then my oldest plays basketball. So there's a lot of time watching high school girls basketball.
Fair enough. Very cool. Awesome. Last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
So we're very blessed to have a place in the panhandle of Florida, between kind of Panama City and Destin, these beaches called 30A. It's like seaside. So we go there a lot. So I love that. But I love the ocean. I don't love the beach. So if you get me in the mountains, I'm a little better than being on the beach, because my brain doesn't allow me to just sit on the beach for 8 hours a day. But with a family, you got to do what's right for the family all the time. So I get my breaks every now and then.
Yeah, no, you got it. Happy family, happy life kind of thing, right? You got to have time for them and maybe take some time for yourself. So no, very cool. Jason, man, it's been a lot of fun. If people want to reach out to you to learn more about Vetty, learn more about your journey, or kind of hopefully try to weasel their way onto your Scalers team in a future iteration of it, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, if you're interested in Vetty, it's vetty.co, not .com. vetty.co. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Truly, if I can help in any way, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Happy to do it.
Awesome. Jason, man, really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.